Hi, I'm Josh Dick.
And I'm Sam Fritchell. Welcome back to Star Wars Deep Digging, Season 1, Episode,
6.
6, Part 1.
And we return to the Battle of Yavin already in progress. Sorry, my bad, people. I should have had the page ready to go. I am so unprofessional today. Great, I think I found our place. Okay, because we did this, right? This page?
Yeah. Wait, did we? I lost track.
I am fairly certain. Okay, correct me in the comments, assuming anybody is still watching these. If, because I'm 99% sure that we made it at least as far as this page. So I'm going to start on the next page, okay?
Okay.
As if that wasn't enough bad news, the base back on Yavin 4 sent another terrifying update over the comms. Death Star will be in range in 5 minutes. Okay, Luke thought, holding his breath. 5 minutes was still plenty of time. They need only a few seconds anyway to get the actual shot off. Now it was just a matter of getting close enough to do it. Switching to...
Wait a minute. Luke in an X-Wing heard the comms say, Rebel base in range in 5 minutes. Isn't that supposed to be the announcement speakers inside the Death Star saying that?
Well, if you remember the movie closely, both the Rebel base and the Death Star are said stuff like that.
Oh, I see.
Switching to targeting computer, Gold Leader said. They're coming in too hot, Gold 2 said. Gold Leader, I can't. Luke knew without confirming it on his screen that Gold 2's ship had been destroyed. Luke adjusted his course, swinging around to support the run. Stay on target, Gold Leader, Red Leader said. Loosen up! It was too late. Even with Luke's helmet visor down, the flare's Gold Leader's ship was blown apart, stung Luke's eyes. An ache rippled through him as he scrambled to think of what to do next. Gold 5 then moved into place to take the shot. Red Leader, this is Base 1. General Dodonna's voice came over the comm. Keep half your group out of range for the next run. Okay, so in case you're curious, wait, why don't they just have the other half fly behind the TIE fighters and shoot them down? Because if they did that, the turbo lasers would reactivate and start shooting at them, and there are just way too many to dodge.
Oh yeah, meanwhile, while all this is happening inside the Death Star. Sir, we've analyzed the threat and there is a danger. Should we have your ship ready to evacuate? Evacuate? Now? In our moment of triumph? I believe you overestimate their chances.
Yeah, I had canon that a lot of Imperials were deliberately sabotaging the Battle of Yavin because, it's kind of improbable that the Empire lost the way it is. Like, Tarkin's arrogance and stupidity can only do so much. And promise this will be the last time I reference the radio drama, but there is a scene that explains why Tarkin refuses to evacuate. I don't remember what happens in it, so I won't explain it here, but just thought you should know, fun fact.
If only we had someone smart in charge of the Death Star, but no, he got blown up at when the rebels stole the plans.
What? Krennic isn't smart.
Wait, he's not?
No! How did you never notice?
I always thought he was. He was listed as one of the most competent Imperials.
No, he wasn't.
Maybe I'm confusing Krennic with someone else.
Krennic was listed as one of the most evil Imperials. Okay. We can go through the most competent Imperials later. Copy, base 1, Red Leader said. Red 5, take Red 2 and 3. Hold up here and wait for my signal to start your run. Understood, Luke said, scanning the skirmish breaking out beneath him. Sweat worked its way down his face and made his flight suit stick to his back. Keep your eyes open for those fighters, Red Leader said. There's too much interference. I can't get a read on my screen. That from Red 10, who was trailing behind the squadron leader. Red 5, can you see the enemy fighters from where you are? Oh, and by the way, in case anyone's curious, why don't they just turn the X-Wing around and fly directly at the TIE fighters? I guess they'd probably end up crashing into the sides of the trench. Look, this movie doesn't have the best writing, okay? Okay, just bear with us. Luke pulled himself forward in the cockpit, looking down through the canopy. No sign of any... Wait, coming in point 35. 3 TIE fighters were dogging the others. There's racing along the vein of the Death Star. The one at the center was slightly different from the others. Its wings curved at the edges instead of standing up straight. Meet the TIE Advanced. The TIE Advanced X-1, to be specific. I see them now, Red 10 said. I'm in range, Red Leader said. Target's coming up. Luke's breath caught in his chest again. So close. They were so close. Just hold them off for a few more seconds. I can't hold them. Red 10's panic rippled through what little calm Luke had managed to keep. Red 10's X-Wing exploded in a shower of sparks just as Red Leader fired his proton torpedoes at the exhaust port. It's a hit, Red 9 cried. Negative, Red Leader sounded like he was on the verge of tears. He does not sound like he was on the verge of tears in the movie. I'm not gonna call the guy who played him a bad actor, but still. It didn't go in. It just hit the surface.
Oh yeah, while that's happening, somewhere on the Death Star there's a big fight between a stormtrooper and a Death Star trooper.
Wait, is that a reference to Elite Squadron?
That's actually what's happening while the... that's actually happening while the rebels are attacking the Death Star. Basically, it's explained in Star Wars Omnibus at War with the Empire.
Oh, it's one of the comics.
Yeah.
Sorry, there are so many it's hard to keep track. Red 5, prepare to make your run. Hear that, R2? Luke said. Affirmative. Ready. Me too. He switched his comm back over to the others. Wedge, Biggs, close up. We're going in full throttle. There was a horrible scream as Red Leader crashed into a nearby tower, his ship taken down by the fire from the strange TIE fighter. Luke saw it all happen through his window and felt some of his hope shrivel up. We lost Red Leader, he reported back to base, though he had a feeling they already knew. Proceed with your... Well, yeah, obviously, they've probably got tracking chips in all their ships. Proceed with your run, Red 5, General Dodonna said. You're in charge. Right behind you, Wedge said. Okay, this one doesn't really make much sense because, Wedge is way more experienced, even Biggs is more experienced. I'm just gonna chalk it up to Luke being a Jedi and everyone fully being aware how good Jedi are at being pilots. Especially since everyone's well aware of Anakin's reputation at this point. Right behind you, Wedge said. Luke, at your speed, will you be able to pull out in time? Despite everything, Luke managed a small smile. It'll be just like Beggar's Canyon back home. Don't tell me you're scared now. 3 X-Wings powered forward, blasting every nearby structure they could. The Death Star's defenses returned fire, but Luke was flying past, catching away bits of the explosion. Okay, so that's why the turrets don't shoot at them. The ride got tougher, bouncing him around, rattling his brain inside his skull. Hold it together. Hold it together! A shot from one of the towers clipped him, jerking his ship. The sound of alarms filled the cockpits. R2, that stabilizer's broken loose again. See if you can't lock it down. He shot a shower of sparks out of the corner of his eye. Blast it! I'm hit! Wedge cried. Luke gritted his teeth. Get clear, Wedge. You can't do any more good back there. They had already lost so many of their fighters. They couldn't afford to lose Wedge, too. Sorry! Wedge sounded agonized. Sorry, he doesn't sound agonized in the film. Like, it's the kind of sorry you would say if you accidentally stepped on a dog's tail. Like, it's... I'm just go back and watch it. The way Wedge says sorry. And in case you're curious, no, I don't know what exactly is wrong with Wedge's fighter here that means he needs to leave, but isn't so damaged that he, can't still fly. Like I said, writing is not the best. He was a fighter to the core, Luke knew, and he would have gone down swinging if Luke had let him. Luke was in the trench now, racing along the same path Gold Leader and Red Leader had taken. His target screen flashed to life as he pulled it down to estimate the distance to the exhaust port. R2, try to increase the power again. The rattling grew worse. Pops and flashes of explosion lit either side of him. Hurry, Luke, they're coming in much faster this time, Biggs warned from behind him. I can't hold them. Luke tried looking back over his shoulder again as he felt the engines flare with new life. Good job, R2, he thought. Now, hurry up, Luke, Biggs shouted. Wait! The force of the explosion nearly sent Luke hurtling nose first into the surface of the Death Star. His grip on the controls slipped, just for a second. Careful, your grip on the controls slip even for a second in the Death Star trench, you're doomed, as we're about to see. As shock and pain and anger and 1,000 other emotions rocketed through him, Biggs was gone. Chapter 19. Luke was alone. The realization sliced through him, cutting him up inside. It hurt even to breathe. Biggs, it didn't feel real. How could Biggs be gone when Luke had only just found him again? Just like his aunt and uncle, just like Ben, even Han and Chewbacca had left. Status, Red 5! Luke shook himself, trying to break out of his stupor. His X-Wing leveled off as he regained full control. Tears streaked down his cheeks, but he wiped them away against his shoulder. This was a battle. This was their one chance. He couldn't let the others down by just packing it in and giving it all up, no matter how much his chip just felt like it was about to cave in on itself. Still on track for my run, he said. His whole world became the targeting screen. As the TIE fighters raced up behind him, he rolled right and left to avoid their fire. A sudden chill overtook even his pulsing anxiety as he risked a glance back toward the TIE fighter with the angular wings. He felt like death itself was chasing him. Don't think about that, he ordered himself. The yellow crosshairs on his targeting screen steadied as the exhaust port came into focus. Use the Force, Luke! There it was again! Ben's voice filled his mind like a cloud of warm smoke. Oh, in case you're curious what the TIE fighters look like. The Death Star's surface raced under him. He was hearing what he needed to hear, a comforting, familiar voice. Luke turned back toward the targeting device and adjusted it. Let go, Luke! Again! He shook his head, but it was like Ben was sitting behind him, placing a calming hand on his shoulder. You know, given how Force Ghosts work, Ben might actually be doing exactly that.
Yeah.
Like, that's literally exactly what we saw with Kanan and Hera in Rebels.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Kanan did become one with the Force as a Force Ghost. In fact, there may be a lot of moments where that happens between Force Ghosts and other people.
Of course, Hera didn't notice because, only people who can use the Force can see Force Ghost, but I guess that rule isn't very consistent, but the rule's inconsistency is for another day.
Yeah, also there was this one moment a long time ago, way, way back, about 4,000 years, bit over 4,000 years, where the Force Ghost of a long-dead Jedi Master appeared at his former apprentice's side, saying, "You messed up, but now you have a second chance. This girl that has come into this snowy wasteland, you can train her. You could have another chance at being a Jedi."
Yay, Arcajith. And yeah, that's one, it's a bit flexible there because Ulick used to be able to use the Force, but then he can't. It's a long story. Probably the weirdest example is in KOTOR 1, where HK-47 can see the Force Ghost of a Junta, and he's a droid, which is about as far from being connected to the Force as you can possibly get while still being sapient.
I think that's just a glitch in the game mechanics.
No. They actually wrote dialogue for it. They planned this.
Huh. Maybe HK-47 just believes in the Force.
Or a Junta is just built different. Sorry if we're getting very off topic, but we have very little left in the book. I'm not ready to start the next book until the next episode, so we're gonna milk as much as we can out of this in order to pad out the runtime. Again! He shook his head, but it was like Ben was sitting behind him, placing a calming hand on his shoulder. Let go, Luke. If the Force was as limitless as Ben had said, if it was with him in every moment, why couldn't Ben somehow be reaching across it to encourage him? He knew what Ben was asking him to do. Turn off the targeting screen, trust his instincts. But this was it, his one shot. Yavin 4 was minutes away from being destroyed, and the rebellion along with it. Hadn't Red Leader tried to use the targeting system, though? It hadn't worked for him, even though the system had been perfectly calibrated. Luke turned the thought over in his mind, his pulse speeding as fast as his ship. And then there was that moment on the Falcon. Luke had been blinded.
Yeah, basically, I'd like to say this. This may be a bit off topic, but I'd just like to say it anyway. Maybe it's not the system. Maybe it's me.
I'll be honest, that was one reference I didn't get.
Oh, well, actually, probably said it wrong. It's actually this. Vader won't always be your master. I sense only me.
Oh, yeah, bit of a stretch, but again, we're stretching things today. Hadn't Red Leader tried to use the targeting system, though? It hadn't worked for him, even though the system had been perfectly calibrated. Luke turned the thought over in his mind, his pulse speeding as fast as his ship. And then there was that moment on the Falcon. Luke had been blinded and still managed to deflect the blast from the remote. That should have been impossible. But maybe that's what Ben had really been trying to tell him. The impossible could become possible if he was just willing to trust himself and the Force. Luke, trust me. Grim determination pooled in the center of Luke's chest. He took a deep breath, closing his eyes and reaching for that place of warmth he had felt on the Falcon and in the simulator. It was like slipping into a refreshing stream after being caught under the pounding sun for too long. Luke reached up and flipped a switch. The targeting screen drew back with a click, clearing his field of vision. Luke, this is Base 1, General Dodonna's voice crackled over the comm. You've turned off your targeting computer. What's wrong? Nothing, Luke said, feeling the last bit of tightness in his chest ease. I'm all right. A burst of laser fire from the TIE fighter with the angular wings engulfed R2, sending sparks flying. Luke was sure he could hear the little droid wailing as he looked back over his shoulder, trying to assess the damage. I've lost R2!
No! Why do I go to these types of movies?
You know, it wouldn't be the first time. Remember Karita? The Rhydonium? An explosion strong enough to destroy a ship the size of a city. The explosion was that big. R2 took it point blank.
Oh, that just explains how awesome R2 is.
At this point, must be celestial intervention.
Probably. I mean, R2, I would also say it's plot armor.
Who's to say that every instance of plot armor isn't just the Celestials interfering?
True. Maybe the Celestials are interfering.
We are all but puppets on the strings of sufficiently advanced aliens indistinguishable from gods. Like I said, we're milking things today. The Death Star is in range of the planets, General Dodonna warned. The trench narrowed slightly as Luke raced toward the exhaust port, his hands steady on the controls, his thumb flicking up over the cover over the launch button for the proton torpedoes. He felt like he was being carried along by a powerful stream, but instead of being afraid, he was sure of himself, sure he could succeed. Another explosion from behind him momentarily rocked his focus. Yahoo! A new voice joined the fray, overpowering the surprised sounds from Base 1 and the other pilots. A smile stretched across Luke's face. Han! Luke yelled. The Millennium Falcon was cruising behind him and destroyed two of the TIE fighters, and sent the third one with the odd wings spinning off into space. By the way, in the movie, the weird thing is, Han doesn't destroy the second TIE fighter. The second TIE fighter goes out of control, presumably due to panicking that the Millennium Falcon is firing on them, crashes into Vader, and that's what sends Vader flying away into space, while the other TIE fighter crashes into the Death Star trench. No one's quite sure why the TIE pilot did that, although I have heard a fan theory that Vader was using battle meditation to control the minds of his TIE pilots, and the shock of one of their deaths knocked him out of it, causing the other one to, well, you know, when you're being mind controlled and you suddenly snap out of it, you're not exactly lucid.
Yeah, well, I've seen an instance of disrupted battle meditation happen before. Critical point in the Great Hyperspace War. A Sith Lord by the name of Naga Sadow had his battle meditation disrupted, which destroyed all the illusions he created. Then the Republic was like, hey, wait a minute, the Sith Empire isn't gigantic, it's only a few ships.
Sadly, that's in the comics, so we're probably not going to get to it. Also, remember the time a Sith sniper turned the Jedi retreat into a massacre?
Retreat into a... Oh, yeah. No, wait. No.
Jedi Path.
Oh, I see. It's probably... Oh, yeah. That's definitely in the... Oh, yeah, it's probably in the texts.
Drinking game. Take a shot every time one of us manages to make a reference that the other doesn't get. Luke could hear Chewbacca roaring in victory in the background. You're all clear, kid, Han said. Now let's blow this thing and go home. Luke turned back to the task at hand, his finger over the trigger for the torpedoes. When the feeling came, a strong nudge from some invisible energy force, Luke slammed his thumb down on the trigger and fired. Chapter 20. Luke watched the twin burst of light disappear into the exhaust port and pulled his X-Wing up and up and up out of the trench. The sigh he released shook his whole body. Luke blinked in disbelief, looking down again. He felt like he was coming out of a dream as he soared up toward the stars. Great shot, kid, Han cheered. That was 1 in a million. One of the other pilots confirmed the hit to the base on Yavin 4 in that single quiet second before everything changed. Luke knew that the moment would be imprinted on his memory forever.
Oh yeah, Luke said in the Imperial Handbook, I was the one that fired the shot that launched the torpedoes into the Death Star, but the Force itself wanted the Death Star destroyed. The Force itself was guiding my torpedoes towards the main reactor.
Yeah, sometimes divine intervention requires a couple million people to die. And yes, as many people have pointed out, a lot of people died on the Death Star, and if something like that happened in real life, it would be considered a war crime. The writers are aware of this. Okay, Luke angst over it later. We'll get to that. Luke watched the twin burst of light disappear into the exhaust port and pulled his X-Wing up and out of the trench. The sigh he released shook his whole body. Luke blinked in disbelief, looking down again. It felt like he was coming out of a dream as he soared up toward the stars. Great shot, kid, Han cheered. That was 1 in a million. One of the other pilots confirmed the hit to the base on Yavin 4 in that single quiet second before everything changed. Luke knew that the moment would be imprinted on his memory forever. The way the ring of pure energy and fire blew out from the center of the battle station. Okay, rain. So Special Edition is canon. Ripping it apart into nothing more than shreds of metal and dust. The pressure of the detonation rocked the X-Wing, sending it bobbing. Just as quickly as flight smoothed out again and calm returned to the galaxy. The terrifying giant was gone, and with it the weight of fear that had been pressing down on Luke. Remember, he heard Ben say, the Force will be with you. Always. And it would be. Luke saw that now, feeling for the first time that all these parts of himself, the farm boy desperate to escape, the Jedi trainee, the Rebel Alliance's new piloting recruit, had fused. Character developments! He saw the future spread out in front of him, opened wide. Luke's descent into Yavin 4's atmosphere was filled with the cheers and cries of the officers and staff in the control room. He brought his X-Wing down low over the jungle, cutting through the thick mist until the temples finally appeared in front of him. He waited his turn to pull into the hangar, falling in behind the remainder of the red and gold squadrons. By the time he made it inside and initiated the landing procedures, the whole of the rebellion had flooded in to greet the pilots. He had never been so relieved to see all their faces. Luke scrambled to unhook his straps and... Okay, so the remainder of red and gold squadrons aside from Luke is 1 starfighter each. Feel the need to point this out. Okay, so there's some debate over whether the pilot of the Y-Wing was Yvonne Verlaine, Leia's sidekick from the Princess Leia comics, or Kian Farlander, the player character of the X-Wing video game. However, as many have pointed out, Y-Wings can be two-seaters, so it could have been both of them. The question is merely which one was pilot and which one was gunner. Luke scrambled to unhook his straps and push the canopy up. He tossed his helmet on the seat and was halfway down the ladder before he took his next breath. Luke! Leia ran toward him, a blur of white pushing through the crowd. Luke! He somehow managed to catch her as she slammed into him, laughing. He swung her around in a huge hug, setting her down just as Han came up behind them, grinning from ear to ear. The captain didn't resist as Luke pounded his back. I knew it, Luke said, punching his shoulder for good measure. I knew you'd come back. Han shrugged. Well, I wasn't going to let you have all the credit. Chewbacca growled behind Han, giving the captain a little shake. All right, and because we wanted to make sure you got out of this mess in one piece, Han said. How does it feel to be a hero? Oh my, R2. You know, I guess they never explain in the movies what happened to all of that money the rebellion paid Han with.
Actually, they do. In the book Heir to the Jedi.
Movie. They don't explain what happened to the treasure in the movie.
Oh. Well, yeah, that part's true.
Okay, yeah, and I'm pretty sure the expanded universe explanations are pretty inconsistent, but all that would involve delving into the comics, and we're not ready for that yet. Okay. And because we wanted to make sure you got out of this mess in one piece, Han said, how does it feel to be a hero? Oh my, R2! At 3PO's distressed voice, Luke spun at his heel. In all the excitement, he'd somehow managed to forget about the droid who had held his back. A technician was lowering R2D to the ground carefully to avoid damaging him further. His white and blue body had been scorched nearly black. Wiring stuck out from his joint like climbing weeds, and one of his small arms had been blown off. Seriously? That's nothing! He took a direct hit from a cannon designed to demolish buildings. He should have been disintegrated.
I would actually say that R2 has invincible plating, something that can withstand planetary bombardment. I think R2 may be laced with Durasteel.
It's got to be much more than just Durasteel. Oh no, Luke said, rushing over. R2, C-3PO wailed. R2, can you hear me? Say something. The prodigal droid turned to the mechanic. You can repair him, can't you? The technician nodded. We'll get to work on him right away. You must repair him. Sir, if any of my circuits or gears will help, I'll gladly donate them.
None of your parts fit him and you know it.
Yeah, I guess I don't see why they would be compatible. He'll be all right, Luke said, resting a hand on the prodigal droid's shoulder. Facing the others again, he was surprised to see Leia smiling up at Han. I knew there was more to you than money, she said. Don't tell anyone, he said with a wink. Wouldn't want to ruin the surprise, your worship. Leia, she insisted, rolling her eyes. Just Leia. They're a married couple already. Luke felt a smile tug at the corner of his lips as Wedge came up behind him and punched his shoulder. Nice shooting. Couldn't have done it without you. Luke had to shout to be heard over the songs and cheers that had broken out again. Wedge let himself be swept up into the moment, pumping his fist in the air. For a moment, Luke hung back from the others, leaning against his ship. The atmosphere was humming, brimming with the excitement of everything that they had accomplished. Still, he couldn't miss the holes, the empty places where people should have been, the squadron members who hadn't lived to see the Empire brought to its knees. Biggs, Ben, Uncle Owen, and Aunt Beru. His father. You were right, Luke thought, smiling again as Chewbacca hugged Leia and then lifted her right off her feet. Ben, you were right. He had felt... Okay, this came out after The Force Awakens. Do you think that's like a meta reference to how Leia didn't hug Chewie in The Force Awakens?
Probably, yeah.
He had felt the Force. He didn't fully grasp it yet, and he knew there was so much more he needed to learn about himself and his capabilities. But now he knew that the loved ones who had left him weren't so far away after all. He could feel them nearby, like beams of sunlight breaking through the clouds. When Luke closed his eyes, he saw Tatooine's twin suns shrinking into a violet glow, burning on the horizon and casting the sand in brilliant gold. He'd been so determined to leave, he'd refused to see the beauty of his home, and everything in it had been done to make him who he was. Hey, kid! Han called, waving Luke over. You ready for a real celebration? The crowd was moving out of the hangar, heading deeper into the great temple. No doubt, Luke thought, to dig into what supply of food and drink they had left. Kid, Luke snorted. Maybe Han would always call him that. Maybe the older pilots would think he was just a rookie hotshot who got lucky. Maybe Leia would always think he was just a simple guy from a planet at the farthest edge of the galaxy, not refined or brilliant or particularly charming. But Luke knew now he was so much more, and that he had so much farther to go. This time, no one was going to hold him back. Okay, so, Sam, we've got two choices here. Either we stop the episode now, we do the epilogue next time, and we just include the epilogue in the wrap-up episode, or we do the epilogue and we do the wrap-up episode as part of this.
We'll do the wrap-up episode as part of this.
All right. So, yeah, I'm sure you're all familiar with this iconic scene. When the sun rose golden and bright the next morning, it wasn't just on the ancient temples of Yavin 4, but on a new galaxy, one shining with possibilities. Bit melodramatic there, eh? As the three figures stepped up the entrance of the Grand Temple's throne room, each was overwhelmed by the towering stone walls and ceilings carved with intricate patterns. The jungle was in full bloom, coating the damp air with a rich floral scent. The soldiers of the rebellion had donned their finest helmets and boots gleaming at the sunrise, in boots aiming as the sunrise filtered through the ceiling above in shafts of light. They stood at attention on either side of the long aisle. 3 figures stepped up to the entrance of the great chamber. Luke fidgeted in his new clothes, clasping his hands behind him to hide the way they shook just a little. He relaxed at the sound of Han's soft whistle next to him. Chewbacca urged them forward to where a figure in white waited for them. Celebratory music began, and at the first cue of the trumpets, they started down the steps and toward the front of the throne room. Leia struggled to hide her smile as they strode toward her, wanting it to mean as much to them as it did to her. The rebellion had opened their arms to her, ushering her into a new home, giving her new purpose and helping guide their course. Near where she stood, 2 droids, perhaps the true heroes in all this, had been polished and shined and given a place of honor at the front of the ceremony. A repaired R2 began to bounce on his 3 legs, whistling in delight as Han, Chewbacca, and Leia came to stand before Luke. The medals had been placed with care on a tray. Leia turned, picked up the medals, and one by one placed them over the 3 heroes' heads. They turned back toward the soldiers and officers and took a bow together. The room erupted in cheers. The princess, the scoundrel, the farm boy, the senator, the smuggler, the dreamer, the rebel leader, the captain, the pilots, more than what they believed of themselves, more than what others saw of them, and together a new hope for the future. That's kind of clever, tying it all back together, how they're all parallels to each other. They're just so cute together. They're also so adorable. Okay, we've got about half an hour, give or take a few minutes, to discuss our thoughts on the book. So, should I go first?
I'll go first. Personally, I think the book was because, 1, it was released far after the movie. So, it's far after the movie, so it wasn't a direct tie-in to the movie. 2, the movie itself was amazing, and basically some of the best Star Wars books related to the movies are the ones that are related to terrible or not so great movies.
Yeah, that's the thing about novelizations. They're really only useful in improving upon movies that have failed, because the novelization can include stuff the movies were lacking in. But if you're just repeating the stuff of something that's already good, well, why not just go ahead and watch the movie instead? Now, I personally loved the novel, but I do admit it does have some issues with being like yet another New Hope novelization, of which there are so many, going all the way back to 1976, actually. In case you're curious, you can find the audiobook of the original 1976 novelization on YouTube. It is strange. Like, famously among the Star Wars fandom, it names drops ducks, so someone's like, wow, ducks were canon in Star Wars all along? But, yeah, like, most of the stuff in there is stuff left over from earlier drafts of A New Hope before the script was heavily rewritten. So instead of gold and red squadrons, you've just got everyone's part of blue squadron. And also, there's a lot more name dropping, like, pretty sure Commodore gets name dropped, and I'm sure the full list is out there somewhere. Okay, so point being, okay, we need more stuff to talk about. Want me to come up with something?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we should evaluate the original trilogy novels going forward based on a few different criteria. We'll start with lightsaber duels. There's only one. It is not described in very much detail. So, I guess there's not a lot to say about that. The movie itself, I mean, it's a matter of debate. Nate, like, if you were remaking this movie, would you add in something with a lot more special effects, a lot more hype? Like, some people find that's style over substance. Other people feel like the original is just embarrassing and impossible to take seriously. Still others feel that the second view is kind of like disrespecting the context that the movie was made in, and on and on. Point is, there's not a lot to say that, not a lot to say that I want to talk about.
I personally would like to talk about the characters in this book. Basically, we have the perspective of 3 different characters throughout the entire book. The princess, Leia, who is the main character in setting up the whole plot, setting up everything, putting the plans into R2D2, sending R2 and 3PO to Tatooine, just playing, yeah, just, just waiting for someone to find the droid and put everything into motion. Then we have Han Solo, the guy who meets with the hero Luke Skywalker. His story, while Leia's is setting up the plot, Han's is more of a redemption story. At the beginning of at the beginning of his story, he only cares about credits, paying back Jabba, and earning some more credits along the way. But by the end of his story, he's starting to care about the heroes. He's starting to care about the rebellion that he got dragged into. First, he wanted nothing to do with it. Just go to Alderaan, get the credits, and leave. But now he's being dragged into this whole thing, and he's like, maybe there is something more to the galaxy than just credits. Well, Luke is the hero. He's the one that blows up the Death Star. Yeah, Luke's the hero. He blows up the Death Star. Basically the whole thing was after his tragic loss with Ben, he becomes the hero. His job is becoming the hero that blows up the Death Star. 3PO and R2 are very important in Leia's part of the story, since they were the ones that Leia used to set up the plot. She gave the plans to R2. 3PO followed R2 to Tatooine, and that got the whole story rolling. Then, for Han's partner, Chewbacca, was with Han in the beginning when they were like, yeah, let's go make some credits, pay back Jabba, and do a lot of stuff. Do more smuggling things. But when they met Ben and Luke, Han and Chewbacca went along with them, and whenever Han was mocking the Force or saying, those two can go on their own, let's just go get some credits, Chewbacca was giving Han a look, and Han's like, don't give me that look. Don't give me that look, they're just business. All that matters is credits. No, Chewbacca, I am not falling for these people. I do not care about what they do with their mission. And Chewbacca was always the one saying, well, I care, and so should you. The part where Chewbacca gets loose and attacks the entire facility. There's the part where Chewbacca gets loose, attacks the entire facility. Basically, Chewbacca was actually the one pushing Han to be more open to others than Luke was. Then there's Ben Kenobi. Ben Kenobi was the wise old man on Tatooine who has a much longer story to tell. He used to be a great Jedi Master named Obi-Wan Kenobi. And he used to be the guy who trained Anakin Skywalker, Luke Skywalker's father, to be a Jedi. Obi-Wan goes with Luke because Obi-Wan sees Luke as hope for the future. Obi-Wan then is the one teaching Luke Skywalker about the Force, on how to use a lightsaber, despite Han's joking that the Force isn't real. Obi-Wan eventually has his journey come full circle when he faces Darth Vader, the man who he says killed Anakin Skywalker. So Obi-Wan fights Darth Vader and is killed by Darth Vader, allowing the heroes to escape. It's not that much of a big lightsaber fight, but for old Ben, Obi-Wan Kenobi, it's a noble sacrifice. Obi-Wan stays with Luke as a Force ghost throughout Luke's whole trench run, when Luke and the rebel pilots attack the trench. Luke also meets up with his old childhood friend, Biggs Darklighter, who left Tatooine to join the Imperial Academy, and due to a whole long story, Biggs ended up as part of the Rebel Alliance. Luke also met Wedge, who told him, Luke, try out the simulator. This would be great for helping you fly. Then when Luke finally used the Force, he beat Wedge's record. And Wedge is all like, hey, nice! You're going to be a great pilot after all. So Luke made a new friend in Wedge and found an old friend in Biggs Darklighter. Yeah, he made a lot of friends when he joined the Rebel Alliance and became an X-Wing pilot. General Dodonna, the guy in charge of the entire base on Yavin 4, it is not much of a main character, but not really much of a background character either. He's the one that tells the pilots everything they know about the Death Star based on these schematics, and is the one in the control room watching as the pilots charge towards the Death Star. He's even the one that gives Leia the medals, which she hands out to the heroes at the end of the story. Wedge is, so first we have Biggs, who grew up on Tatooine, flew in the Battle of Yavin alongside Wedge and Luke. Biggs was shot down by Darth Vader in the trench run. Wedge actually survived the whole encounter with the Death Star, and he may be a important character to learn more about in the future. He may have a bigger role in the years coming after this story. Luke obviously was the pilot that blew up the Death Star, so he's a big deal. Really big deal. Oh yeah, then we have the main antagonist of the film, Darth Vader. Darth Vader got the most exposure in this book from Princess Leia's view of the story, since Vader was the one that captured Leia, held her prisoner, and interrogated her. Vader didn't really have nothing to do with Han's part of the story, but with Luke's part of the story, Luke was the one that saw Vader kill Obi-Wan Kenobi. And Vader was the one that chased Luke down with his TIE X-1. In the end, Vader survived the Death Star. Vader survived the whole Death Star trench run, since Han came back, blew up a TIE fighter, which caused Vader to go spinning into space. So Vader was just lost somewhere in space while the rebels blew up the Death Star. The rebels blew up the Death Star. There was other X-Wing pilot with Wedge and Biggs called Jack Porkins, who was killed during the Death Star trench run. The final character I'd like to discuss is Grand Moff Tarkin, the guy who blew up Alderaan. Basically, he thought the rebels weren't really any threat and that the Death Star would blow up the base any moment, but when Luke fired the torpedoes that flew into the Death Star, Tarkin and a lot of Imperials died on the Death Star. So that is my synopsis for each character in this book.
Okay, so that makes me curious. If the book could have told you what the other original trilogy characters were up to, what would you have wanted from that? Just to throw out a completely random example, what do you think the Sarlacc was up to right now?
Well, I think the Sarlacc was still on Tatooine. Still just there on Tatooine.
That was mostly a joke. But it does remind me, you didn't cover Jabba.
Oh yeah, Jabba did appear in one. Oh yeah, there were a few characters I missed now that I think about it. In Han's storyline, there were a few bounty hunters. Uh, there were a few bounty hunters. So first off, we have Greedo, one of the worst bounty hunters in the galaxy. Worst because he always takes risks, always charges right in, and doesn't think about the consequences. So when Greedo met Han Solo, he's all like, "Ooh, now I can get my bounty and prove I'm the best bounty hunter in the galaxy." Basically, he wants to be the best, but he's nowhere near that level. So, so yeah, Greedo is all like, "Oh, I get to take in Han," but Han then tells Greedo, "Hey, sit down, let's have a chat." So Greedo takes the bait. He's all like, "No, you'll do what I say," and I say, "I'm gonna chat. You sit." And now I'm. And when Greedo draws his blaster, Han also draws his blaster. There's a firefight, and then Greedo dies. So Greedo was known for that one scene in the Mos Eisley Cantina, and also known for prompting a big question: who shot first, Han or Greedo? Because there were many changes to that, which eventually led to the final point that Han indeed did shoot first. And Greedo was a terrible shot. He was as much of a terrible shot as he was a bounty hunter. Oh yeah, Jabba was appeared in one scene. Yeah, Jabba appeared in one scene for A New Hope. He was the one that led a bunch of his. He and a bunch of his guards surrounded the Millennium Falcon, telling Solo to come out. Han Solo said, "Oh, I'm right behind you, Jabba. Now let's talk price." So they talked price a little, but oh yeah, they saw they talked price a little, and Jabba said, "I think you I here's what you owe me from the whole transportation issue. You owe me 20,000 credits." Han Solo said, "That's too much. Why don't we narrow it down to 15?" Jabba says, "All right, fine. 15 will do. You need to bring me 15,000 credits so you can pay off your debt." Han Solo says, "Done. But if you fail, I'll put a bounty on you so big that every bounty hunter in the galaxy will be looking for you, and you can go nowhere near any civilized system." So after that long talk, Han was more set than ever on collecting enough credits to pay off Jabba. Basically, after Han left, he never returned, and Jabba started getting impatient. And that's where we leave off with Jabba during the whole thing. He's just on Tatooine waiting for Han Solo to appear saying, "Jabba, we got you your 15,000 credits." But that's not happening. Also, there's a bounty hunter that's seen in one scene in the special edition and mentioned by Han Solo in his whole story part of this book, Boba Fett. Boba Fett has a long and complicated history. Basically, he's the best bounty hunter in the galaxy. He has taken down a lot of bounties and made himself and gave himself a huge reputation. Han's just glad that he got into Greedo in the bar because Han's like, "Oh, I don't want to meet Boba Fett here because Boba Fett will know exactly what to do and how to exactly take me down." So Han's like, "Oh, it's Greedo. I can take him." But if it was Boba Fett, Han'd be like, "Oh no, I'm doomed." Oh yeah, for Leia's part of the story, there was Captain Antilles of the Tantive 4, which was to deliver the Death Star plans to Alderaan, but was ambushed by Vader's Star Destroyer. Captain Antilles, Captain Antilles was ambushed by the Empire, found by Darth Vader, and Darth Vader force choked Captain Antilles to death. Even interrogated Captain Antilles, saying, "Where's the plans?" Captain Antilles said, "We don't know what you're talking about. We're just a diplomatic ship on a negotiation mission." Then Vader said, "If this is diplomatic, where's the ambassador?" So when Captain Antilles failed to give an answer, Vader force choked him to death. So Captain Antilles appeared at the beginning of the film, in charge of the rebel troopers, who was in charge of the rebel troopers holding the doors, but they were all killed by stormtroopers. And Captain Antilles appeared again in a scene where he was killed by Darth Vader. Oh yeah, we also have the ITO interrogator droid, an Imperial interrogation droid. Those types of droids are used for interrogation measures and interrogation methods. So yeah, that's Leia's story. That is Leia's story and Han's story. So let's move on to some characters from Luke's story. Oh yeah, they mention this guy Yavin a lot. Yavin is Red Leader of Red Squadron.
I pronounced it Garvin but they never say it. I pronounced it Garvin but they never say it in the movie, so who can say?
Yeah. Oh, Garvin he was Red Leader of Red Squadron. And some members of Red Squadron included Wedge Antilles, Jack Porkins, Biggs Darklighter, and Luke Skywalker.
If you can't pronounce Red Leader's name, just call him Dave, okay?
Okay, Garvin Garvin died at the Battle of Yavin alongside Biggs Darklighter and Jack Porkins.
Porkins' middle name is Tono, by the way, in case anyone's curious.
Porkins was shot down by TIE fighters. Biggs Darklighter was shot down by Darth Vader's TIE Advanced. Red Leader, Garvin shot a torpedo into the Death Star main reactor, but it didn't actually hit the reactor, just impacted on the surface. Then Darth Vader's TIE X-1 shot down Garvin killing him. Also, we have Gold Leader, who goes by the name Dutch Vander. He was killed at the Battle of Yavin by TIE fighters. Yeah. Out of all the survivors of the Battle of Yavin, we have Luke Skywalker, Han Solo and his Millennium Falcon, Wedge Antilles and his X-Wing, another X-Wing, and one Y-Wing that probably had both characters that were previously mentioned. Yeah, that had, what were their names?
Kian Farlander and Yvonne Verlaine.
Yvonne Verlaine and Kian Farlander. It's probably who was in the Y-Wing after the Death Star blew up. So there was a huge celebration after the Death Star blew up. How I would rate the book itself, basically I would rate it, and it's good, but not extremely good. I'd say it's good, but not extremely good. More of a bronze status rather than what we're looking for. Yeah, more of a bronze status. Good, but not really good. Bronze status.
Don't you mean bronzium?
Yeah, bronzium. Oh yeah, bronzium. Yeah. So I'd say with this book, it's good, and for digging for Star Wars, we struck bronzium.
Oh, that's good. We should keep doing that. Okay, so next up is From a Certain Point of View. 40 short stories. Which ones are you looking to, Sam? Palpatine? Lando?
From a Certain Point of View. This one is the New Hope edition. Basically, I am looking forward... Yeah, so who am I looking forward to? Well, I am looking forward to hearing Uncle Owen's complaining about that crazy old wizard on Tatooine. What were the Jawas thinking when they took R2 and 3PO? More importantly, yeah, let's see. More importantly, what was going through Greedo's head when he met Han? Oh, and what about those two guys, Evazan and Ponda Baba, who we never really seen in this book, but we might see in the next book since they were in the movie. Also, what about a few other Cantina patrons? The modal nodes? Yeah. A few other Cantina nodes. Oh, a lot. Oh yeah, some characters I'm looking forward to hearing about are some Imperials that were on the Death Star. Some random Imperials, some random stormtroopers on the Death Star when Luke and his friends led their rescue mission. What were going through their heads. Also, what about the Imperial Council? We only know Grand Moff Tarkin as one of the many members, but what about Wolf Yularen, Admiral Mahdi, or Cassio Tage?
Sorry that the names are so ridiculous. Oh, and in case you don't remember, Mahdi's first and middle name are Conan and Antonio, because George Lucas was having an interview with Conan O'Brien, and he decided spur of the moment to say that Mahdi was named Conan Antonio Mahdi, and because George Lucas said it, it is automatically canon. There was a similar situation when George Lucas was interviewed by Jon Stewart, and he gave Obi-Wan's home planet the name of Stew John, which we know absolutely nothing about. No one ever visits it. Fanfics tend to portray it as, like, space Scotland full of red-haired people because, you know, that's what Ian McGregor is, a Scottish guy he was also kind of a redhead.
If you don't remember who Admiral Mahdi is, he's the guy that said, "Ooh, you're terrifying me with your sorcerer's ways, Lord Vader. I do not believe in the Force. You have a sad devotion to that religion," and then gets Force choked.
He gets a much higher, bigger role in the radio drama. Do you know that he actually tries to persuade Tarkin to steal the Death Star and go rogue? And Tarkin only does it because A, Palpatine is criffing terrifying, and B, Vader's still on board the Death Star.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'd also like to hear some opinions from Rebel technicians and some other rebels that were on the base on Yavin 4. Who were they? What were they up to? That's another thing I'd like to hear from a certain point of view.
And speaking of opinions, we would love to hear yours. Now, this isn't an obligation, but, you know, we have a comments section. So, if you feel the need to voice your thoughts, go ahead. Worst comes to worst, we disagree. And you know what? That's fine. I'd ask you not to be rude about it, but, you know, either you are going to or you aren't. That's out of our control. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. So just post your thoughts on the book, ask whatever questions you want, I'll probably answer them. Give advice and recommendations for the channel's future. Not sure how much longer we're going to keep this up, but hopefully for at least a few months, maybe a few years.
Yeah.
If by some miracle we're still doing this a decade later, that would be great, but that's not going to happen. Okay, 1 minute left. Any last minute things you want to say, Sam?
I'd say from a certain point of view might be better since it expands on a lot of background stuff that this book didn't really get into. So I'm looking forward to that. And looking forward to hearing about that. And yeah, looking forward to hearing about it.
All right. I guess that's that. May the Force be with you. Good luck. Some other third thing?
Yeah. Good luck. May the force be with you. Pizza.
Alright, I guess that's it.